to Nerd Explosion, the weekly podcast where, based on a monthly theme, we nerd out about whatever we want. I'm Cameron.
And I'm Kate.
And we are closing off True Crime Month, at least for this year, with another one from yours truly here, because Kate failed to do research.
It's not that I failed to do research. It's just that the research I did do, I was like...
It's not that I failed to do research. I'm just lazy.
No, it's just the case that I was going to do was like Minnesota's fucking groundbreaking case. And I was like, I need to devote like a week to researching this to do it justice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So maybe a future episode, mayhaps?
Yeah, definitely a future episode. But for today's episode, we actually have another one that I had planned, and it kind of combines both one of Kate's, greatest loves and one of my greatest loves.
Greatest loves.
Because she's really into true crime, and I'm going to combine that with one of my favorite things, video games. Today, I compiled a bunch of true crime or video game related true crime stories. They're not really like grand, so that's why I just compiled a bunch of them. So
I'm curious to know if I know any of these.
You might, I don't know, we'll go through and you might know some, but we'll see. Before we get into that, new episodes come out every Saturday, so do the things and do all the stuff, you plebs. But I guess with that being said, let's dive into this. So I think before we get into this, I kind of want to give some updates on the last episode we did. Talked about like the Quiet on Set and then Dan Schneider and all that stuff. Apparently, there's going to be a 5th episode of that coming out in April. Mm-hmm. And the episode title is called Breaking the Silence. And I saw a thing that apparently like a bunch of people are going to be joining it, including Drake Bell. And I don't know if it's going to be all the same people plus Drake Bell, or if there's going to be more people. A lot of people think Amanda Bynes is going to be in this new episode, but apparently there's another thing that said that she declined appearing in the thing. And I don't know who to trust, so I guess we won't really know until it comes out. But
I did see an article though that Amanda Bynes's quote difficult past has been revealed, and that there's a lot implying like more about the situation with her and Schneider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw a thing. It said Amanda Bynes allegedly declined appearing in Quiet on Set. So I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but I guess we won't really know until the whole thing comes out. Because unless you asked her personally, I don't know if she's going to be in it.
Well, and I also saw a TikTok that was like, the sound was like, it was like, where were you, whatever. And it was all these different actors and actresses, child actors and actresses from the time. And then the gist of the video was like, why didn't you speak up? Like, why didn't you say something? Why, whatever. And then the very last picture, because it was a set of pictures that you like scrolled through, right?
Yeah.
The very last picture was a screenshot of a Google article that said Jeanette McCurdy offered $300,000 in hush money, declined.
Well, yeah, that's the thing we covered too. She declined the hush money because she's like, no, fuck that.
So I'm wondering if a lot of these people want to speak but can't.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even think now. I don't know if Jerry Trainer was offered the hush money, but can we just say he's probably the best damn thing that could have happened.
Jerry Trainer is a gift, and we do not deserve that man.
Like, I don't know if it was exactly intentional or not, because I don't know if people are reading too much into it, but it definitely looked like he did everything he could.
It felt intentional.
It looked like he did everything he could to try to make like the set of I guess not just the set of iCarly, but when he was on Drake and Josh too, trying to make it like a safe environment by him trying to direct attention away from Jeanette McCurdy and Miranda Cosgrove.
Yeah.
Like he would do, like there's some videos out there where Dan will like address them and Jerry would be like, hey, look over here.
Right.
So God bless Jerry Trainer. And God, who else is the other guy? There's another guy. I think his name is it's Cooper something. And I don't know if he was an actor or if he was part of the crew, but apparently he has said some stuff too. And I saw a clip. I think it was, I don't remember what the show is. I think it's like Henry Danger or something. I think that's one of the shows he works on. But there was a guy, he was going off about some of the crew like zipping up their flies or whatever because somebody's fly was down. I don't know if it was a bit or if this person was legitimately like getting after him for it. But it was, I can definitely see that being like a legitimate thing. Like, even if it was a bit, the guy mentioning it, he's like, hey, you know, zip him up. This is a kid's show. I can tell, like, even if that was a bit, there was some, like, frustration hidden in that bit. Like, some actual, like, you know, getting your frustrations out in a bit, you know? But yeah, I guess the last update with that is that there's a 5th episode coming out, and we'll see what happens with that. Because, I mean, with a title like Breaking the Silence, it's gotta be something massive. But anyway, I guess let's get into these stories. So the first one I'm going to pull up here. Now, do you know the name Daniel Petrick at all?
It sounds really familiar, like I should.
To go off Wikipedia, Daniel Petrick, or Petrick, I guess it's pronounced, is an American convicted murderer from Wellington, Ohio. At age 16, he shot both of his parents after his father confiscated his copy of the video game Halo 3.
Yeah, I did know about this.
His mother died, but his father managed to recover from a critical injury. He is incarcerated for life with a chance for parole. Studies of video game addiction or the effects of violent video games on society, as well as gun control, often mention Petrick. Now, I will say, like, right off the bat, as they mention, you know, the effect of, you know, violence in video games or whatever, I'm definitely in the boat that video games do not cause violence.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's poor mental health and, you know, these people not knowing right from wrong and fantasy from real life. It's like somebody, like, you could easily have a kid who's obsessed with GTA, and if they're not taught right from wrong, they're like, oh, I can apply what I do in GTA to the real world. And that's not the case. I think it definitely comes down to, you know, people have to teach these kids right from wrong, and like, hey, what happened in a video game doesn't translate to real life. Like, you don't bring that to the real world.
And I think there's a lot of, blaming video games is a lot easier than being like, oh, hey, I failed as a parent.
Because
you know what I mean? Because most people who don't have, and maybe you'll cover it a little bit, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to give a quick blip. Most of the time, quote unquote, normal people don't react that way. I know the difference between GTA 5 and the real world. I know the difference between Ragnarok and the real world. I know the difference between Saints Row and the real world. You know what I mean? But if you have...
Props to you for mentioning Saints Row.
Well, I did just watch you play it the other day.
That I gave up on because it frustrated me.
Yeah. But if you already have some disconnect in there, or if the lines between reality and not are already kind of blurred, or you're already predisposed to violence, I could see how that line gets crossed, but I don't think it's inherently because of the video games people are playing.
It's not the video games itself that cause violence. It's the person's mental state that leaves them to believe that, like, violence in video games can, you know, that, like, oh, I can bring that to real life, you know? Let's see. I'm going to go back through here. Ooh, shooting. On October 20th, 2007, about 1 week after the game was confiscated. So, basically, the whole part of this is that this kid was just upset and just felt betrayed that his dad confiscated his copy of Halo 3. Which, I mean, isn't even the best Halo, but whatever. I mean that definitely as a joke because I think Halo 3 is the only one I ever played. I'm not really an Xbox person, but I never really got into any of the Halo games. But going back to this, the shooting, on October 20th, 2007, about 1 week after the game was confiscated, Petrick found his father's key to unlock the safe and stole both the game and the gun. So he found a safe where his dad put the copy of Halo 3 in the gun safe.
Also, as long as we're on the subject, fingerprint lock your gun safes, people.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. Or just make them...
Or take the key with you, like...
take the key with you, like keep it on your keychain, or if you do a keyless thing, just make it so that a child can't easily open it. For anybody wondering, anybody curious, the gun used is a Taurus PT-92. And it looks like your standard pistol.
Yeah, but I've heard they have some firepower.
I know nothing about guns, so I'm just going to believe you.
I know un poquito. A little bit.
Let's see. So the dad put Halo 3 and the gun, or in the gun safe. Around 7 p.m., Peter walked up behind his parents while they were sitting on a couch and said, "Would you close your eyes? I have a surprise for you." He proceeded to shoot both of his parents. Jesus. I didn't even read that part. I just saved it because I knew this is something I wanted to talk about, but I was like, oh my god. "Would you close your eyes? I have a surprise for you." That's fucking cold.
That's
and
cold-blooded.
Calculated. Like, Jesus, that's psychopath. Let's see. His father said that, quote, "his head went numb and he saw blood pouring down from his skull." Susan Peter died from her gunshot wounds in the head, arms, and chest. Peter then placed the gun in his father's hand to make the crime look like a murder-suicide, saying to him, "Hey Dad, here's your gun. Take it." A few minutes later, his sister Heidi and her husband Andrew Archer arrived at the house, planning to watch a baseball game together on television. They arrived 2 hours earlier than was planned. Before they could enter the house, Peter told them not to come in. He lied that his parents were fighting. Upon hearing groaning, they forced their way through and discovered the aftermath of the shooting. Heidi called the police. Daniel drove away in the family van in an attempt to escape to a friend's house, but he was arrested during the drive.
Damn. Does it say what he was charged with?
Get into that.
Oh, okay.
This is literally the next part of this is trial. Peter's trial was held from December 15th to 17th, 2008 at the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas in Elyria, Ohio. I think that's how you say it. James Burge presided as judge and the defendant rejected a jury trial. About 25 young people arrived to support Petrick. I don't know why, but alright. Several of his relatives and friends testified, including his immediate family, Jonathan Johnson, and his grandfather. Why does that sound like such a fake name? "Hi, I'm John Johnson."
I'm Jake Jacobson.
I'm Jake Jacobson. At the trial, Petrick was cited crying. His father was supportive and announced that the young man had come to deeply regret shooting his parents. Quote, "He still does not understand why he did something so terrible," Mark Petrick said at the trial. Prosecution case. The prosecutor, Anthony Sillo, or CO, I don't know if it's the double L is a Y or whatever, but anyway, I'm going to say Sillo. Anthony Sillo portrayed Petrick as a heartless killer. He showed no remorse for his actions, so he claimed, and tried to set up the shooting as a suicide. He had planned his crime He had planned his crime carefully, knowing that Heidi Archer and her husband planned to enter the house at 9 p.m., but his plot was foiled when they arrived 2 hours early. In a psychological report ordered by the defense, Petrick had informed the psychologist that he had planned the murder of his parents for a week. So he had planned that murder a week ahead of time.
Murder one.
Mm-hmm. James Kersey represented Petrick as the defense attorney. Neither Kersey nor Petrick attempted to dispute the facts of the crime. Instead, Kersey argued for the insanity defense, video game addiction being the underlying psychiatric condition.
Oh my god.
Because of the enormous amount of stress put on him due to his severe infection and resultant spinal injury, Petrick was much more susceptible to being influenced by the game, not to mention his youth. Petrick, he said, was not in the right state of mind to understand the finality of shooting his parents. In other words, he had been playing violent video games so long he did not realize that real-life death is permanent. The levels of video games can be replayed over and over again. Killed and injured characters, including the player himself, return to their original states at every reset. Petrick, he continued, must have expected that his mother would eventually return to a healthy and normal state, having been immersed in virtual violence so long. The kid really thought his mom was going to respawn.
See, I think that's a crock of shit because even kids understand the finality of death.
I mean, most do, yeah. But like, I just can't get over that he thought in real life.
I think he was just doing everything he could to get out of a first-degree murder charge. And when did it say this happened?
2007.
So he was in his teens.
So that was 17 years ago, so he was 15.
Yeah.
So definitely old enough to know better.
Oh, yeah. Well past old enough to know better.
Kiersey disputed the prosecution's assertions about Pietrich's personality, using the testimony of Pietrich's family, friends, and acquaintances to contend that he was a typical teenager. The young Pietrich's addiction was strong enough for him to take along a video game of all things while fleeing. To Kiersey, Pietrich was not a plotting murderer, but someone who spontaneously killed without planning. The defense did not present psychologists for an expert opinion on the mental effects of violent video games. And now, we get to the conviction. Pietrich was convicted for aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, and tampering with evidence. Due to his age, Pietrich could not be sentenced to death. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years, which is the minimum sentence. The maximum sentence Pietrich faced was life in prison without parole, recommended by the prosecuting attorney.
Well, there's a good chance. I mean, just because you have the opportunity of parole doesn't mean you'll ever actually be paroled.
Yeah.
It's up to the parole board, and if they deem you a danger to society, they're going to keep you in there.
And I'm not seeing anything in here that he was released, so he might still be in prison to this day.
Probably.
See, the case has been highlighted in papers and articles regarding video game addiction and video game violence. Halo 3 publisher Microsoft commented briefly to the media, quote, "We are aware of the situation and it is a tragic case. Pietrich is currently serving a sentence at Grafton Correctional Institution and will be eligible for parole in 2030. Oh, there we go. Okay. So he's eligible for parole in
2030?
In 6 years. So that basically confirms he's still in prison now, which honestly is where he should stay because like I said, I don't blame video games for violence at all. I think he just couldn't separate reality from fiction.
Right.
So yeah, any thoughts on that one?
I disagree with you. I think he knew full well what he was doing, and he was a 15-year-old acting purely on impulse.
Well, my only argument of that is again, it's the whole thing of not separating fiction from reality.
Yeah, but I don't think that's true. I think that's a crock of shit.
I feel like part of them would think that if I shoot somebody, they'll just respawn. But there's also part of it that's I know exactly what I'm doing here because he was mad that his parents took his game.
Especially since he had the wherewithal to try to frame it as a murder-suicide and said, "Here's your gun, Dad."
Yeah. So yeah, no, I can see your point with that.
Tells me he
I did see your point with that. He knew full well what he was doing. But yeah, that's Daniel Pietrich. Next story I got here involves the Huffmeyers. Let's see. I actually got a thing in my notes here. The Huffmeyer. Actually, let me go into this thing so I can get some names. Lester and Petra Huffmeyer. Now, do those names sound familiar to you at all?
No.
Okay, so Lester and Petra Huffmeyer's deep obsession with the online computer game World of Warcraft led them to abandon the real world, including 2 young girls left in their care, prosecutors say. The girls, 5 and 10 years old, were virtually ignored and forced to live in squalor inside a mobile home in Anaheim, according to the Orange County District Attorney's Office.
I did hear about this.
Authorities haven't specified the girls' relationship to the couple. When the girls were finally rescued, their hair was matted, their teeth were quote, damaged beyond repair, and their feet were crusted with dirt. The couple, Lester and Petra, both 41, pleaded guilty last week. Sorry, this is from a LA Times thing, and this was in 2014. So basically, they pled guilty. They pled guilty to child abuse, false imprisonment, and delinquency charges. Lester Huffmeyer was sentenced to 5 years in prison, while Petra Huffmeyer was ordered to serve 3 years and 4 months in prison. Prosecutors say the unemployed couple played World of Warcraft all day as the girls were forced to live in, quote, unsanitary and uninhabitable conditions inside a mobile home from May 2010 to May 2013. God, for 3 years? Are you kidding me?
I saw the pictures of that, and squalor is not the word I would use, but those girls were in rough shape.
Some people just shouldn't have kids.
Yeah.
I swear to God. Investigators found kitchen appliances covered in mold and cobwebs, stacks of trash, debris, mold, and feces throughout the home, a pile of used condoms under a stuffed teddy bear, and inoperable toilets. The girls were not allowed out of the home and did not attend school. After years of abuse, a neighbor called police, who found the malnourished girls. Jesus. That's a whole nother side of the whole video game thing too. Now, where I think video games don't inherently, cause violence, this is kind of the other side of it with, addiction kind of.
They can cause neglect for sure.
With, if you're too, like addiction takes all different type of forms, whether it's, alcohol, drugs, video games, like
gambling, sex.
It's fine to be, have an interest and be obsessed with it or be really into a game, but you gotta, at one point, you gotta have enough mental capacity to be like, okay, I'm not gonna let this take over my life,
Right.
And it's dangerous when it gets to that point. I mean, as we saw with these parents, they just left their kids just basically to die almost.
I know.
And
couldn't be me. I could never leave a living creature that I'm responsible for an extended period of time. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to this next story. Now, does the name Cody Eugene Wygant sound familiar?
It do.
Cody Eugene Wygant, 24, was charged with third-degree killing and willful child neglect after confessing to suffocating his young son. The child, who was crying during Wygant's gaming session, prevented the man from enjoying his Xbox. He was then thrown into a playpen and smothered by blankets for 5 hours. When emergency services arrived at the home, the 16-month-old Damien Wygant wasn't breathing. The child was pronounced dead at the local hospital, according to investigators. Wygant claims he was frustrated due to the child refusing to stop crying, preventing him from enjoying his games. He covered the young child's mouth for 3 to 4 minutes, then became lethargic. He put him in the playpen, covered him in blankets, which were wrapped around the boy's head, then returned to his game. Thoughts?
I hope he burns in hell for all of eternity.
Yeah, seriously.
Also, we should put a trigger warning at the beginning of this
probably
episode.
No, I will, definitely. But with this guy, it's okay, your kid's trying, you're
here's
gaming.
a crazy idea. How about put the controller down and be a fucking parent?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if your kid's trying during your gaming session, your thought should be, okay, let me put this down and figure out why my child is trying, instead of sitting there and be like, God, shut the fuck up. Be a parent and take care of your kid, and don't just ignore them because, you got a game with the boys.
Right.
And that's just, when I said with the last story that some people shouldn't have kids, some people just shouldn't be gamers.
Or both.
Yeah. So I just, okay. Moving on to this next story. By the way, sorry for background noise. My cat, who I like to call Wheezy, is decided to interject himself in everything.
Excuse the fuck out of you. Whose cat?
My cat.
My cat.
My cat. Who's the one that brought him home? Who's the one that brought him home?
Me.
Who's the one that said, yes, we will take him?
Me.
No. That is not true at all. Dorian was the cat of somebody I went to high school with, and I told them we would take the cat.
I'm gonna a Bose right here.
I will moonsault you off the top rope.
I will fucking hit you with the 369. That's not what it's called, is it?
It's a 619.
Yeah, 619.
If you're going to threaten me with violence, do it properly.
If you're going to insult me, do it correctly.
Okay. Moving on. No.
We're not actually violent towards each other. We have a very loving and healthy relationship. Just throwing that out there.
Now, serious mode. This next story. Now, this article I'm reading off of is from March 12th, 2011. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia teen accused of killing mother over loss of video games. A Philadelphia teen is facing murder charges after he allegedly killed his mother for taking away his video game console. Kendall Anderson, 16, is being charged as an adult for the murder of his mother, 37-year-old Rashida Anderson, following a heated argument on November 26 concerning a laptop stolen from school. Anderson's mother confiscated his PlayStation. I couldn't stand the arguing, Anderson said in a confession read by homicide detective Thorsten Luck of the Philadelphia Police Department during a preliminary hearing. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, the teen deliberated for 3 hours before he decided to kill his mother. In his confession, Anderson said he struck his mother with a claw hammer 20 times while she slept. The gruesome confession also revealed that he attempted to cremate her body. When his attempts failed, he proceeded to beat her head with a chair and dispose of her body in an alley behind the Andersons' home. The body was discovered 2 days later after family members' suspicions led them to call the police. Anderson is charged with murder, possession of an instrument of crime, and abuse of a corpse. If I could, I would not do it again, Anderson said in his confession, according to reports. I really miss my mom. She was the only person who cared for me. Video game addiction has yet to be included as a behavioral malady in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The effects of excessive video gaming are similar to those of mental addictions. This disorder has been described as an impulse control disorder, which is similar to compulsive gambling. So yeah, that's the whole thing with like video game addiction too. A lot of like when it gets really bad, a lot of people act on impulse, and that's how like a lot of these stories happen, because they think that like they start connecting stuff from like video game. And I don't think video games, I can't repeat that enough, video games do not cause violence.
No,
it's poor mental states. And obviously this kid, how old was he? 16, did it say? Yeah, 16. Obviously is so obsessed with video games and so addicted to video games that somebody, punishing them for something that they did, taking away the PlayStation, can cause something in their brain to snap, and they no longer are thinking like a sane human being.
Right.
So, any thoughts on that story? You got any thoughts?
I just have a really hard time believing that people genuinely have like teenagers especially like, and I'm not discrediting mental illness, I'm not, because it's a very real thing and we're very aware of that. I have a hard time being like, oh yeah, well obviously because he played video games he thought that he could just kill his mom.
Yeah, it's definitely not the case. It's definitely not, the PlayStation's fault that this happened.
And like my parents took stuff away from me when I was being a shithead. Like their favorite thing to do was take away my phone because I was addicted to it. Like could not go more than 5 minutes without responding to a text message. But it never once crossed my mind to commit homicide.
Well, yeah, because your parents actually raised you right and raised you to be like, know right from wrong.
Right.
And I think that's what, and again, that's what I think a lot of these cases boil down to, is these kids not realizing, knowing right from wrong and being like, hey, maybe like as mad as I am or as pissed off as I am about this, maybe, murdering somebody isn't the solution, because like a lot of times they don't think the consequences through.
Right.
Like And again, they mentioned impulse control, and that's really what it comes down to. It's you act on it, like this kid acted on an impulse, but didn't realize, like, didn't think of the consequences. And I mean, it's one thing to just even think about doing something like this, because if that thought crosses your mind, maybe you should get checked out. But it's another thing when that goes unchecked, and then these people end up acting on those impulses.
Right. Because it's whether or not they're grasping the concept of consequences, like you said, it's because they're acting on impulse and not. When you act on impulse, there's not really that forethought of like, oh, hold on, let me stop and think about this. You know?
Yeah. And
you just do the thing.
Not to like kind of compare this, but like, you know, the people who will post a TikTok or something, like they colored their hair, they're like, oh, my impulsive thoughts won. I'm like, no, that's not what impulsive thoughts are. And when you really boil it down, impulsive thoughts have a wide range from doing something that you probably shouldn't to definitely doing something that you shouldn't. Like, it goes from kind of like not okay to like criminal level, like you need to be locked up.
Right.
So, like, these people who think they know what impulsive thoughts are obviously haven't read stories like this. And be like, maybe think twice before you decide to post Instagram. Be like, oh, I changed my hair from red to blonde. Oh, the impulsive thoughts won.
I mean, well, yeah, I guess. When it comes to, and okay, not to flex my license or anything, but when it comes to like changing hair color, that's not really impulsive because there's a lot of thought process that comes through that. So like you just said, like, oh, going from blonde to red, like that's not acting on impulse. Acting on impulse would be like standing in the mirror and, oh, I don't know, shaving off your eyebrows just because you thought maybe that would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, impulse implies that there's no forethought. You just do.
Well, that's what I mean too. Like, a lot of people think that, like, you know, changing the hair color is, you know, letting their impulsive thoughts win, and that's not entirely the case.
Like, letting your impulsive thoughts win would be like shaving your head.
Would be like,
get off my hair bean.
Shaving your head and then not even, you know, thinking about what it's gonna look like in the end. But again, it, like, not making light of it, but it definitely cases like this, and you get really dark really quick. But it's all up to, like, basically learning right from wrong and learning that, oh, actions have consequences.
Absolutely.
All right, there we go. I got the last story. It took a while to load, but the last one I have here, and it's just straight up like a wiki on a case.
Yeah.
Wilson versus Midway Games.
Oh, I was wondering if you were going to talk about this.
Do you know this story?
Huh?
For those who don't know, on November 22nd, 1997, Noah Wilson, a 13-year-old, died when his friend stabbed him in the chest with a kitchen knife. Noah's mother, plaintiff Andrea Wilson, filed this lawsuit against Midway Games Incorporated, alleging that at the time the friend stabbed Noah, the friend was addicted to a video game manufactured by Midway called Mortal Kombat, and that the friend was so obsessed with the game that he actually believed he was one of the characters. Bless you,
Bless
Bean.
you.
Jesus, cat. I don't even know if that picked up in the recording, but yeah. For those who might have missed it, my cat just sneezed, like, very violently.
He's my motherfucking cat.
All right, you know what? I'm not gonna argue with you on that.
They're both my cats.
All right, whatever helps you sleep at night. Let's see. Wilson claimed that Midway's design of marketing and Mortal Kombat caused her son's death. She alleged that she was entitled to damages under the theories of product liability, unfair trade practices, loss of consortium, and negligent intentional infliction of emotional distress. So, actually, I'll just read this because it's kind of short. The trial court concluded that plaintiff's complaint failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. The court held that the product liability claim failed because Mortal Kombat is not a product within purview of the Connecticut Product Liability Act. The unfair trade practices claim was time barred. The loss of consortium claim was not recognized under Connecticut law in this context, and the negligent and intentional infliction of emotional distress claims were precluded by the First Amendment. So basically what I'm gathering from this is obviously they couldn't try Midway Games with anything because
they're not liable.
Well, yeah, Mortal Kombat, it's just a video game. Like, they're not liable for somebody going off and, stabbing their friend because, hey, I want to be Johnny Cage or I want to be Baraka or whatever. And, like, I've played plenty of Mortal Kombat in my day. Like, I've played a lot of Mortal Kombat, and I can't imagine being in the mindset of somebody who would play that and believe that they're one of the characters.
Right.
But it's just this whole case of the mom trying to sue Midway or sue the developers of Mortal Kombat, which Midway doesn't even own Mortal Kombat anymore. So
no. Well, and even if they did, they're not liable. Like,
well, yeah, even the new people, because like obviously Mortal Kombat back in the early days, like when it first started, was owned by Midway Games. But then I don't know if they disbanded or they turned into something else. But now, like the new Mortal Kombats that come on now are owned by NetherRealm Studios and like Warner Brothers, I believe. I don't know if that was just Injustice, but basically the studio that is responsible for Mortal Kombat now is NetherRealm Studios.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's like, yeah, they're definitely not liable for somebody going off and stabbing their friend.
Right.
Like, that's just ridiculous to blame a whole company who had nothing to do with it. Like, again, look at the mindset of your kid.
Well, and
check their mental state.
The company's responsibility for the game stops after development.
Yeah, like once they release it, that's like, hey, you bought this game, and
it becomes public domain at that point.
Like, that's
or not public domain, but
that's the thing. A 13-year-old. So if anything, the fault is on the mother, because if this kid was 13, she would have had to buy the game for him.
Right.
Like if he owned the game or whatever, or I don't know if it was
a reason these games are rated mature.
Well, yeah, because it's 97, so I don't even know what Mortal Kombat would have been out by then. But if it's one that, well, yeah, just look at Mortal Kombat 97. But if it was one that was like a home console release, then yeah, the mom totally would have had to buy the game for him. I mean, I did the same thing when I played Mortal Kombat, because I didn't actually own
Mortal Kombat Annihilation was released in 1997.
Annihilation was in 97?
Hold on, I lied. That's a movie.
I was gonna say, that's isn't that the shitty sequel to the first Mortal Kombat movie?
I believe so, yes. Mortal Kombat 4.
So the fourth game was out by 97?
Yes.
So if it was a like I said, if it was a home console thing, the mom would have had to buy the game for him. I mean, even like when I first owned a Mortal Kombat game, it was Mortal Kombat, I think it was technically 9, but it was one that was just called Mortal Kombat, and it came on the PS3. I had to have my mom with me to buy the game, for me. And it was, I mean, I don't necessarily enjoy Mortal Kombat, but that's beside the point.
It looks like the game was ported to PlayStation, N64, and Microsoft Windows.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely, like, this kid stabbing his friend, if any blame to anybody, it would be on the mom for buying the game in the first place. Game, yeah. Because, like I said, a 13-year-old, like, you can't just...
Well, and a 13-year-old should know better.
Even in 97, I don't think a 13-year-old could just walk in a game store and buy a game like Mortal Kombat.
Especially if it was rated M, yeah.
And I don't remember if this was before or after the whole ESRB thing, but I remember that was a big thing with like the government and everything when they decided to get involved with video games.
Right.
Especially one of the biggest games that dealt with that was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Yeah.
Like it was even to the point where Hillary Clinton was one of the people involved in this whole thing. And there was a whole big thing. I don't remember all the exact details, but basically the whole government was freaking out. They're like, hey, you know, we don't want these games with the violence and stuff easily getting in the hands of kids, so we need a way to determine, you know, these, you know, how violent these games are, or what games children shouldn't play. Right. And thus came about the ESRB system, which basically gives games their ratings. But I will say when, like, nowadays,
which should have been implemented way sooner, but whatever.
Well, sooner they just kind of just released them just to release them. Like, yeah, if you buy them, whatever, we make money.
Right.
Either way. But, like, even today, like, I don't think, well, I guess today kids know better, and also there are a lot of parents that are a lot more relaxed and stuff, but I think as far as, like, violent video games, it's definitely not as, like, prominent as it once was.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the occasional Mortal Kombat game, but there aren't many video games out there currently that are, like, graphically violent. I mean, I can only think of a few examples, like, you know, any Mortal Kombat game.
Dark Souls, Bloodborne.
Well, they're not really too graphically violent.
No, but they could be argued as violent video games.
Yeah. But, yeah, I guess with that, that's all I had for stories. I don't know what we're gonna do next month. I have a couple of ideas for themes for next month, but, you know, we'll see what happens. But, I guess with that, we're gonna call it an episode here. You know, make sure to follow this podcast on any wherever you're listening. Follow me on social medias. Follow Kate on her social medias, Kate vs. the World, or Kate Does Hair. All my socials and whatever are in the link tree in the description. But I guess with that being said, you know, call this an episode here. Do positive things out there. Drink plenty of water. Do all the good things that do all the good stuff. I've been Cameron.
I've been Kate.
And as always, we'll see you in the next one.
Nerds out.
Nerds out.